Oklahoma is the land of second, third, and last chances. Who were the people that made it so? The Red River Institute, JohnJDwyer.com, me, Gwen Faulconer Lippert, and our signature sponsor, Atwoods, present Oklahoma Gold. Together with award-winning author and historian John J. Dwyer, we'll stitch the golden threads of Oklahoma history. Here now on Oklahoma Gold. Dignifying our history about some amazing Oklahomans. John J. Dwyer, tell us about this person.
Gwen, this story is a startling reminder that even now we live amidst epic history. We walk amongst it. We know it. We talk with it. It's also a reminder of how the misguided belief that certain groups of people are innately inferior or of less worth than others due to their racial stock, ethnicity, or any other reason can lead not only to hatred, discord, and violence, but to horror beyond what anyone can imagine. The saga of your friend and mine, longtime Norman resident and PhD professor emeritus at the University of Oklahoma School of Electrical and Computer Engineering, Leon Zelby, is a lasting case in point. This brilliant, gregarious gentleman was living the frolicsome life of a mischievous but well-educated 14-year-old Jewish boy in 1939 Poland when Nazi Germany unleashed its fearsome blitzkrieg on the nation. His parents were attending the New York City's World's Fair. He would not see them again until after the war, many years later. He was staying with his grandparents. After Adolf Hitler's soldiers took them away, he would never see them again. As the soul-crushing Nazi terror enveloped Poland, magnified by Stalin's brutal communistic Soviet Union carving out a chunk of the nation for itself, that's usually forgotten to history, the occupiers began transporting Jews and others to concentration and extermination camps. As stories of death and terror began to emerge from these, Zelby's aunt killed his 10-year-old sister, her own children, a nephew, and herself, rather than going to one of the camps. Leon only escaped the same fate because he was staying with other relatives that day. When the Germans took him to the Auschwitz-Birkenau camp in 1943, they put him to work as a wood turner, an important job in which he had experience. He actually learned the additional skill of metal turning while at Auschwitz. A typical day at the camp, Zelby recalled, including working his job until the Nazis eventually ended that, and standing in attention, marching, and sometimes digging. Most of the time, though, he told me, we just did nothing. Zelby believed that his word-turning job many times spared him the often seemingly random death through shooting, hanging, or gassing that ravaged the camp. He saw many people killed, including in groups who were lined up and shot by firing squads. He knew many fellow prisoners from his hometown and neighborhood, and most of them died. Once, Zelby and two other prisoners, all three of them ill, were taken from an assembly to a camp hospital to be subjects of a medical experiment in which the Germans hoped to find a cure for the sickness besetting the young Jewish men. In a supreme irony, the Germans' medicine actually cured Leon's illness and spared him from the annihilation by gas that wiped out everyone else who was assembled that day and ordered to the showers. Zelby remembered the process for that annihilation, and I'm quoting him now. They would line a group up outside, pick some of them, sometimes all of them, we never knew how they picked them, walk them over to the chambers and tell them to get undressed, presumably for showers, end quote. Surprisingly, aside from the many executions, Zelby recalled no brutality committed by the German camp guards. Some were merely indifferent, and some were nice to him. They were just soldiers who had been drafted and were doing their job, he told me. Like everyone else, they were trying to make it through the war. Remarkably, he held no bitterness toward them. Millions of Jews, as well as many Christians, gypsies, communists, homosexuals, and other groups the Nazi regime viewed as unacceptable, perished in Nazi prison camps. When the Allies closed in at the beginning of 1945, the Germans evacuated Auschwitz. All of their enclosed railroad cars were transporting troops to fight the Russian hordes on the eastern front of the European theater. Thus, open-air coal cars were used to move Zelby and his fellow prisoners west into Germany, away from the advancing Soviets. Late one afternoon, at an opportune moment, location, and train slowdown, Leon Zelby leapt from the top of their coal car and landed far down below in a soft mountain of snow that prevented injury or perhaps even death, and hid he and his friends from view until dark, when they fled back east toward Poland. Zelby and the young man with whom he was traveling made it to a Polish town where locals fed and lodged them until someone betrayed them and Nazi soldiers took them to jail. They were slated for execution the next morning. That night, a courageous band of non-Jewish Poles risked their own lives by sneaking into the jail, rescuing Zelby and his companion, and getting them to the large city of Krakow, which the Russians had already seized from the Germans. There they hid Zelby and his companion. Leon Zelby completed his high school degree there. To graduate high school, he recalled, you had to pass a standardized exam. He failed this written exam and had to take an oral version. How I struggled to translate Caesar's commentary on the Gallic Wars from Latin to Polish should have earned me an Oscar, Zelby recalled. And those of you that familiar with Leon Zelby can just hear him saying it. He added that in Poland, to get a high school diploma, you had to know Latin and 2 other foreign languages in addition to math and the other subjects. The supposedly backwards country, Poland, he added wryly. Many months later, Leon Zelby was reunited in New York City with his parents, whom he had not seen in 6 years. Within 3 weeks, he was drafted into the U.S. Army, which wanted him to go through officer candidate school. Zelby told them no, cracking that, I prefer to remain a slave. 3 years later, he received his honorable discharge from the National Guard, possessing the rank of Master Sergeant. And Gwen, as we'll learn after the break, freedom, a memorable career, and an unforgettable love story. Getting choked up here. With a girl familiar to many Oklahomans awaited Leon Zelby in post-war America.
I'm struck by his story when you interviewed him. The way he told it, the snow, he was grateful for because when he jumped off the coal car, it protected him. The people protected him. He had a way of seeing with gratitude how one thing led to the next, and what an incredible professor at the University of Oklahoma. For those of you that would like to revisit this story, you can go to johnjdwyer.com, type in the search Leon Zelby, and read what John is telling us right now and see photos of the incredible Leon Zelby and understand even more as you digest this story, his survival of the Holocaust, and what a great American and Oklahoman he became. This is Oklahoma Gold. Dignifying our history with a love story? John J. Dwyer, tell me about Leon Zelby and the love of his life.
Well, Gwen, before the break, we were discussing his remarkable and death-defying pilgrimage of young Polish Jew Leon Zelby through World War II, the Holocaust, years in an infamous Nazi concentration camp, and travel to meet his parents in post-war America. And in that America of the early 1950s, Gwen, during his honors-laden academic pursuits at the University of Pennsylvania and at the California Institute of Technology, Leon Zelby's parents, while he was studying, they traveled to Israel to visit another couple who were old friends. They had not seen each other in years, as the Zelbys, Leon's parents, had stayed in America since 1939, and the other couple, the Kupferminces, had moved to Israel, then called Palestine, before the war. Mrs. Kupfermintz had been one of Mrs. Zelby's, Leon's mother, closest childhood friends in Poland. Well, when the elder Zelbys returned from Israel, his mother showed Auschwitz concentration camp survivor Leon a picture of one of the Kupfermintz's daughters. Her advice, coupled with the stunningly beautiful image he stared at in the picture, compelled Zelby to begin a written correspondence with this young lady immediately.
Pen pals?
Pen pals. After perhaps a year of written correspondence in 1954, Leon journeyed to Israel to meet Rachel Kupfermintz. His first impression upon finally seeing her in person, "I want to marry her." With an exclamation mark, I might add. He asked her to do so a full 2 hours later, and she accepted, and they were married while he was still in Israel. And thus, Leon Zelby returned to America as a husband, his wife Rachel following him here shortly thereafter, and he built a future for a new generation of Zelbys in freedom, including his own children, Lori and Andrew. In 1967, while serving on the faculty of the University of Pennsylvania, Leon accepted a position to lead the University of Oklahoma's brand new School of Electrical and Computer Engineering. OU President George Lynn Cross became a close friend and, quoting now, one of the men of my entire life that I most respected, Leon recalled. Leon chaired the department from 1967 to 1971 and taught, researched, and wrote books until his retirement in 1995. Leon Zelby believed in learning lessons from our past, but understanding and appreciating his story and that of the millions of other World War II concentration camp prisoners and victims, that is not possible, he told me. You have to be there. You can't appreciate the hunger, the fear. You can't appreciate it. You have to be there. And that's the end of the quote. He did, however, have some specific advice for the young. Study. Learning is very important. Unfortunately, we don't learn because we seem to repeat our mistakes, just as Santayana said. Those who do not learn from history are destined to repeat it. Zelby notably urged this in his own words, and these are his words, not mine. Get rid of colleges of education. If somebody is going to teach math, get a degree in that. If somebody is going to teach history, get a degree in that. Then take maybe a semester with a few courses on how to teach. The earthly life, and I realize this may be news to some, of this remarkable Oklahoman concluded on November 9th, 2020, after 95 years, 66 of them married to that beautiful girl from Israel, Century 21 Goodyear Green International Hall of Fame realtor, Rachel Zelby, one of the greatest at her craft that Oklahoma has ever seen. 2 children, 3 grandchildren, an acclaimed career, accomplished horseman and pilot, the tattoos still visible on his arm where his Nazi captors tattooed him upon his entrance into Auschwitz as a teenager. And like you said, you can see those pictures and others on our johnjdwyer.com website. Leon Zelby, United States Army veteran, American patriot, glittering and valorous Oklahoma gold.
And his wife, Rachel, still is effervescent, full of life.
And a beautiful woman inside and out. And I have to say, one of my own wife, Grace's greatest mentors in the real estate profession. And those of you listening, we've got all sorts of wonderful stuff about the Zelbys on our website, John J. Dwyer, D-W-Y-E-R, johnjdwyer.com. We've got a blog article I wrote a few years ago, the podcast, and then we've got from the Oklahomans 2 book, flash your device, your electronic device over the QR code next to the beginning of the story. It opens up into a full story about Leon and Rachel Zelby at johnjdwyer.com.
Now that's Oklahoma Gold.